everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is time to do a reading wrap up of all of the books that I've read this past month and a half, and I think I've read the most romance books this month than I ever have in a single month. But it is summer, so it's pretty much inevitable to read summer romance books. Not that I'm complaining because I've read so many good books and there are a lot to get into, so let's get started. The first book that I read and the one that everyone is talking about is Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. It's a fantasy romance book about a princess named Odessa who is the second-born princess of her kingdom, and she's pretty much been second best her entire life. So when the crown prince of another kingdom comes over to marry her sister in an arranged marriage, Odessa, along with everyone else, is really surprised when he chooses to marry Odessa instead of her sister, and Odessa is tasked to spy on the crown prince, who is now also her husband. I was skeptical before reading this book because all of the attention it was getting, but after reading it, I have no complaints. The tension and the banter made this book so enjoyable. This book had a lot of fantasy elements as well as romance, and I definitely recommend this to all fantasy romance readers. The next book that I read is also really popular, and it's The Silver Elite by Danny Francis. It's a high-stakes dystopian romance, and it follows Ren Darlington, who is a modified, meaning she has really dangerous powers, and in this world modifieds are hunted and killed for their existence. But Ren has managed to hide her powers throughout her life until her uncle is executed for having powers, but this triggers something inside her because Ren decides to infiltrate the Silver Elite, which are the kingdom's deadliest fighters and the ones responsible for hunting modifieds. But while Ren's in this deadly training program, she meets Cross Redden, who is a captain in one of the deadliest elites, and this book is definitely enemies to lovers with so much good banter. This book received a lot of skepticism because it pretty much blew up the day it was released. I really enjoyed this book, and if you are ever in need of a fast-paced book to get out of a reading slump or just want a really good book to read, then I definitely recommend reading this one. The last fantasy romance book I read this month was The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig, who is one of my favorite authors when it comes to writing a really immersive world. The gothic fantasy settings are always so unique, and I can always clearly picture everything that is being described. This book has more romance than her other series, One Dark Window, and it's about Sybil Delling, who is a diviner, and as a diviner, it's her job to drown in these magic waters, and as she's drowning and basically dying, she can see visions of the future. But when her friends start going missing, she sets on a quest to go find them with a really sarcastic knight named Rory, and the two of them have hilarious exchanges throughout the book, and I really loved how many plot twists this story had, as well as the fact that the magic system is just unlike anything that I've read before. I was so excited for this new release, and I'm glad to say it lived up to my expectations. The first romance book I read this month was The Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy, who has become a recent obsession of mine. This book was just such a good standalone palate cleanser because the dialogue had me laughing through the entire book. This is a hockey romance between Gigi Graham, who is an aspiring women's hockey player, and Luke Ryder, who is also a hockey player. These two start out as enemies, hence the hilarious banter, but they make a deal to help each other because Gigi wants to get selected for the Women's Olympics, and she needs help on her hockey skills. In exchange, Gigi will put in a good word for Ryder to her dad, who is selecting a hockey player for his program. This book is a standalone, but the series is connected, and it's also one of my favorites. The next book is also by Elle Kennedy, and it's called Girl Abroad. Everything about this book just reminds me of summer, and it's about this 19-year-old named Abby who gets the chance to study abroad in London, but when she gets to her dorms, she realizes that all of her roommates are guys, and it becomes this rom-com love triangle between two of the guys, one who is a rugby player and the other who is a musician, and Abby has never considered herself a rule breaker before, but I guess what happens abroad stays abroad, and this was just a really enjoyable summer romance. The next book that is also a new release is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and it's about Samantha, who first meets Xavier at his animal clinic that he owns, and they go on this seemingly endless perfect date, and when circumstances separate them, they still manage to find their way back to each other. Unfortunately, I did not like this book as much as I wanted to. I just didn't feel the chemistry, especially because a big part of this book was how attracted they felt to each other. The writing was still good, just at a slower pace than what I would have liked. The next book was A Deal with the Devil by Elizabeth O'Rourke, and I absolutely loved this romance book. This is an enemies to lovers book, and it's also giving Grumpy Sunshine, and it's about Natalia who has to work for Hayes Flynn, who is a rich plastic surgeon. They are constantly clashing over the most trivial things, which leads to really sarcastic banter, but at the same time they're both going through really hard situations while keeping a funny and tough exterior. If you're looking for a romance book with tons of banter as well as deeper characters, then you will really enjoy this book. Next is Unloved by Peyton Coring. This is a friends to lovers hockey romance between Rose Sheriff, who is a hopeless romantic, and Matt Freddy, who on the surface is a funny hockey player. There's also just a lot of pressure on him for a multitude of reasons, but Rose and Freddy first meet when she becomes his tutor. They quickly become friends, and I really liked how this book was just super romantic. This is a really good romance book, especially if you like golden retriever vibes. The next two books I read were Daisy Hates and Daisy Hates The Great Undoing. They are both part of the Magnolia Parks universe. With this entire series, I feel like you either hate it or you love it. It's a high society, drama-filled romance, and these two books follow Daisy Hates, who is part of London's most notorious crime family, and she's been in love with Christian Hens, who is also one of London's most dangerous men, for a really long time. But when he eventually likes her back, she's with someone else, and I feel very conflicted towards this series, because even though while everything about these books are so engaging, I feel like most of their problems could have been solved by a 5-minute conversation. Even so, I can still see why so many people love these books. I think that if you like dramatic storylines, you would also enjoy the series. The last book I read was Saving Six by Chloe Walsh. It is the third book in the Boys of Tommen series, and this is one of my favorite, if not absolute favorite, romance series of all time. It follows Joey Lynch, who is Shannon's older brother from the previous books, but he's gone through so much that any person his age should ever have to go through. He's raising all of his younger siblings and trying to protect everyone from his abusive father, and when he meets Aoife, who is his boss's daughter, he tries to stay away from her because he doesn't want her to get involved, but Aoife sees through the shields that he puts up and refuses to give up on him. She is a strong female main character that can handle business, and I really could not get enough of their story together. But if you want a really addictive and emotional romance, then you definitely need to read this series. Those are all of the books I've read this past month. If you have any book recs or requests, please let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.